Today we have the U.S. Senator from Minnesota, Amy Klobuchar. Thank you so much for coming back on.
Well, thank you so much, Brian, and happy 100th episode. That's
Thank
incredible.
you. Thanks so
I
much.
won't
I
ask you what
appreciate
your favorite episode was. I suppose you don't want to
this.
pick one.
This one will be my
Oh, there
favorite
we
episode.
are.
So let's jump in because I know you don't have a ton of time. But one major bottleneck that we're seeing right now in global international supply chains comes from ocean shipping. And now you just sponsored legislation that passed the Senate with unanimous support. Could you speak about that?
Yeah, it just shows how bad the problem is.
Right.
What to get unanimous? I mean, it's got to be like a volleyball resolution that usually does
Right.
that. Senator Thune and I came together on this because we were hearing from our farmers, manufacturers, everyday citizens who are saying, wait a minute, how come we're suddenly paying so much for things at the grocery store? There's a lot of reasons and problems with the supply chain, but one of the major ones is that shipping cost, just to put your stuff in a container, has gone up 3-4 times what it used to be. And meanwhile, these international shipping conglomerates, all of which are based in other countries, their profit has gone up sevenfold, and just from one year to the next. So they're basically padding their pockets at the expense of manufacturers who are trying to ship their things to other countries, and also farmers, and then that gets translated into consumer prices.
Well, no, you've said that these shipping companies have to take our goods just like they take foreign goods, and that they've got to charge fair prices, which means significantly less prices for the containers that they've been doing right now. Who dictates what those fair prices are? Like, who has that kind of oversight over these companies?
Okay.
Who's going to be the one to say, like, you have to charge X, Y, and Z?
Well, good question. So right now they're clearly doing it themselves, but the Federal Maritime Commission has jurisdiction over these companies. The problem is there's not a lot of spine in some of their rules. And so what we did here with this bill that unanimously passed the Senate is say, okay, you need to pass a rule, and this is a direction of Congress. The House has a similar bill that basically says you've got to charge fair prices. And wait, two other things. You cannot export back to other countries air. You have to fill your containers with American-made goods. They literally are bringing over a bunch of stuff from China, unloading it, and then they're in such a hurry to go back that they don't even put goods in some of the crates. That's what I mean. They're exporting air, and we have got things mounting up and waiting to be sent overseas. And by the way, we want to be a country that makes stuff, invents things, exports to the world. That's good for American jobs. And the third thing in the bill is that you can't retaliate against companies that call attention to this and go to the commission with the problems, because there's been all kinds of bullying behavior going on from the shippers.
Well, now you have this bill. You have Biden, who announced that he'll be releasing 180 million barrels of oil from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. You have Senator Maggie Hassan, who introduced a bill to suspend the gas tax until the end of the year, and then that was blocked by a Republican. So there are people who are trying to fix these high prices. And then you have the vast majority of Republicans who refuse to do anything to help because hurting Democrats is more important than helping Americans. So what's your message to those Republicans who are, super quick to go on Fox News to blame every nickel of high prices on the Democrats, and yet can't be bothered to lift a finger to actually help alleviate those prices and alleviate those high costs for Americans?
It really is hypocritical if you don't join us on working on, here's a good one that you didn't mention, pharmaceutical prices. How about letting Medicare negotiate, which we would pass out of our caucus, and if we could get a few of them on board, we could get this done, letting them bring down pharmaceutical prices to what the VA gets to charge our courageous veterans. We could do the same for seniors, and it would help everybody. That's 46 million seniors. Once those prices go down for things like Symbicort or for so many other drugs where we have seen these escalating prices, it helps everyone. So we're working to put a cap on insulin, but we also want to see the negotiation of prices. That's a good example. I can't explain why they want to play politics with this stuff when in fact this is a uniquely American moment where we are coming out of the pandemic, where people are seeing each other again, and we don't want to be 300 million plus silos. We want to find common ground, or with what's happening in Ukraine, this patriotic moment. And I think one of the things that I see, and with Judge Jackson's confirmation that we just saw, this incredible moment of joy and just exuberance for her on the court is that people are starting to talk to each other again. So instead of just looking at your own TV station or looking at your own thing, they're starting to see each other at family gatherings, at work. And of course, they don't always agree, but at least there's another voice in their ear that says, I didn't think that was fair when Judge Jackson got that question, to someone who is just watching Fox News. Or someone says, you know what? I think actually it's really good that President Biden got all the world behind us. It's a reality check, right? And we weren't having it during this pandemic. So I'm very hopeful, and Judge Jackson's approval ratings show it after the hearing, that this is going to be a moment where we're going to see a bit more democracy in action in a positive way, because people are connecting again.
I did want to talk about that exact issue. We just saw Judge Ketanji Brown Jackson get confirmed only a few hours ago as of this recording. Now, her confirmation was basically a given, and yet that didn't stop Republicans from peddling some batshit crazy narratives just because, right? Like her confirmation was never really at risk. They just decided why not.
Well, they thought it would catch on, especially some of them, not all of them, and including certainly not the three that voted for her, Collins, Murkowski, and Romney. But there were also others that behaved more civilly. But no, they thought they could get political hay out of it. And honestly, it backfired in a big way. Because the numbers show in the 60% for people that wanted her confirmed. And part of it was her. It was all about her, the pillar of strength, how she showed grace under pressure and taking the questions, how she answered that question about being a mom or her faith with such honesty. I'm not perfect as a mom. I try my best. I'm so proud of my kids. I mean, just like anyone would answer it that was a human being. And I think that she captured people's hearts. And the fact that happened while she was getting this assault of hundreds of mean questions, basically, including ones that were just way over the top, basically associating her as somehow liking porn or liking people that like porn. And it was really something. And I think that it was a lesson to them that didn't really work. And sure, a few people raised money off it on their side, but overall, people did the gut check and they wanted her on the bench.
Do you think that there was any sense of shame or embarrassment over the Josh Hawleys and Ted Cruz's or Marsha Blackburn's?
Sure there was when Ben Sasse called it.
On the right? Yeah, exactly.
The newest noun ever, jackassery.
Right.
We got another Republican senator, that's what he called it. He went out right after Ted Cruz. And so, I think that was, and also we were able to hit back with facts. One of my favorite facts is that only 3% of her opinions were ever overturned. At one point, it was overturned by the DC Circuit, and then the Supreme Court unanimously affirmed her original opinion of a case. So, there's all kinds of examples of that we were able to get out there, as well as her, being a federal public defender, but also having a brother who's a police officer, an uncle who's a police chief, support from the Fraternal Order of Police, and we were really able to make that strong case.
Yeah, and I think that was made abundantly clear. I don't think there was anybody who denies her qualifications to be on the court. Speaking of the Supreme Court, we recently found out that Ginny Thomas had been texting then Chief of Staff Mark Meadows to steal the last election. Democrats are working on a bill governing ethics and recusal guidelines for the Supreme Court. What's the state of that bill, and do you believe that Clarence Thomas should recuse himself on matters involving January 6th?
I do, and that is because of the clear ethics rules that basically apply to every other federal judge, not just state judges, federal judges, that say if there's any appearance of impropriety involving a family member in a case that would make people believe that you can't be impartial, then you should recuse yourself. And actually, Thomas himself did it when there was a case in front of him in the mid-90s about a school that his kid went to. Or Justice Breyer did it when his wife Joanna was on a board of a college or a nonprofit, and the case came before the court. So you see that all the time, that judges recuse themselves. And so I think that's a pretty straightforward ask. My second ask, and I have respect for Justice Roberts, who once again, by the way, this week came out with the Democratic appointed justices, the liberal justices, and said he did not agree that a shadow docket should have been used to decide a certain case, environmental case. because so many of the cases are now, by that conservative majority, are being shoved into what's called a shadow docket. I brought this up in the hearing because Judge Jackson is so transparent in her opinion. That's what they did with the Texas abortion case. That's what they did with a voting case out of Wisconsin. It's outrageous. So what you've seen going on in the court is, one, you got this example of what Thomas did, but two, they need ethics rules. If you really want to be transparent, you should have ethics rules in place. So you can see if people are getting paid for speeches or paid for books or who's giving them lodging. I mean, come on, this is really straightforward. Members of Congress either can't do that stuff or they have to show where they got paid. And in this case, those 9 justices, you never know what's happening. There's no ethics rules about what's appearance of impropriety or not, yet every single other federal judge in the country, including in the circuit courts, has to provide that information.
And by the way, if you're worried about the legitimacy of the Supreme Court, like John Roberts purports to be, then issuing all of these decisions on the shadow docket is not doing anything to help his cause.
No, but I mean, that's what's so interesting. He actually this week he actually criticized them again for using it. He sided with the liberal justices and said that it shouldn't be done in that shadow docket where you kind of make a temporary decision and it's not really thoroughly briefed and there's no oral arguments for the public to see.
So let's finish off with this. You've introduced a bill with Chuck Grassley to help regulate big tech. It's the first tech competition bill to advance since the dawn of the internet.
Yes, that is exactly right. That is exactly right, Brian.
So what does this bill seek to do? And we hear so often the whining about censorship from conservatives. Is this going to assuage any of those complaints, or is this dealing with a separate issue entirely?
I think what is amazing about this bill is that some of those conservatives supported it, but so did people like Chuck Grassley, and so did people like Steve Daines and other people as well as Democrats. Right? You've got Dick Durbin and Cory Booker and Mazie Hirono, who are co-sponsors of the bill. Samantha Bee called it the Ocean's 11 of co-sponsors. So what the bill does is it basically says, when you are a dominant tech company, and we're here talking about companies like Google and Amazon, and you have, like in the case of Google, 90% market share. Okay, that doesn't seem right, and the Justice Department's looking into the whole thing. But if you have that market share, then you can make products, which they do all the time, everything from Amazon making their own products to Google having Google Maps. Okay, but you can't always put your product at the top as the clearly only option and then shove everything else down. And that's why, for instance, Yelp feels so strongly about that, because they've got good restaurant reviews, yet they're dealing with a company that's putting their stuff at the top. Secondly, you can't copy people's secret data. The best example, Amazon literally, luggage organizer, four-person company out of Brooklyn, New York, had to put their plans in place so they could put their luggage organizers on their site. They stole it and created their own Amazon rip-off luggage carrier and then put it on Amazon Basics. That happened. Wall Street Journal uncovered it. Or you can't charge 30%. This is a different bill on the app stores to just willy-nilly certain companies. So this kind of thing is going on all the time. And what we're saying is you can't do that self-preferencing, we'll call it. You cannot copy people's private stuff for your own competitive advantage, and then you can't retaliate against companies who complain about it. So we're pretty excited about the bill. It got through Judiciary Committee on a 16-6 vote. Both Speaker Pelosi and Leader Schumer have pledged to bring these bills to the floor. I'd say 2 other things to note is that there's also a need to invest in the agencies. And now that we have Lena Khan at the FTC and Jonathan Cantor heading up Justice, they're ready to go. We've also passed a bill through the Senate that significantly increases the budget of the agencies. Final thing I'll note, newspapers dwindling in part because our content isn't being paid for, small radio stations, small TV stations. And we've got a great bill on that's bipartisan with Senator Kennedy of Louisiana, and Buck and Cicilline have it in the House, that would basically say you've got to allow these outlets, these small outlets, to be able to negotiate and gain leverage by doing it together to get better rates when the big tech companies, especially Google and Facebook use their content. Australia took them on, and they literally threatened to leave an entire industrialized nation. And one of them shut down some of their links. And then the world got so mad that they couldn't do that. That's what we're dealing with when you talk about bullying behavior.
Well, Senator Klobuchar, we'll leave it there. Thank you so much. I don't think anybody in the Senate does as much as you. So keep kicking ass, and thank you for joining me today. I appreciate it.
Okay, thank you so much. And we're so excited about our new Supreme Court justice.